election, and we must pass the For the People Act this summer in Congress and put it on President Biden's desk for signature. Okay. That's right. Thank you, everybody, for being here today. I look forward to fighting with you.
Let's give it up for Jana Morgan really quick. Yeah, Jana. She's been doing such a tremendous job coordinating the incredible coalition that we have here, the Declaration for American Democracy. So many different groups, so many different issues represented in this common cause of reforming our democracy to be more equitable and representative. Thanks again for everyone that came out in person, and for all of you watching at home. We are so excited to have you here with us today. Next, I'd like to invite to the stage one of our strongest champions in the Senate, Senator Amy Klobuchar. Thanks so much for joining.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Rio. Thank you, everyone. Is it hot enough for you? Are you ready to put some heat on in the U.S. Senate to get this done? I tell you, I think that our number one focus right now is we will not give up this fight. It is too important. We know that there are over 300 pieces of legislation that have been introduced to suppress a vote. Those bills have already passed in states like Georgia, in states like Florida. And you know what they are. They are targeted, in the words of one of my favorite new senators, Reverend Warnock of Georgia, when he said, "What is this all about?" In his maiden speech on the Senate floor, he said, "Some people don't want some people to vote." And you know what political parties do when they lose an election? Usually, our party, the Republican Party in the past, when they lose an election, they say, okay, what did we do wrong? How do we change our policies? How do we change how we reach out to voters? How do we change our candidates? That's what they do. That's how you adjust. That's what a democracy is about. Do you know what these guys are doing right now? They're saying, how do we change our voters? How do we stop people from voting in this country? And it is wrong. That's why the For the People Act is all about national minimum standards to make it easier to vote. It's that simple. It is about allowing people to vote safely, to vote by mail, to vote early. What is so scary about that? Well, I can tell you it is not scary to the people of this country. The people of this country overwhelmingly support in poll after poll the For the People Act. They support it because a lot of them in this last election, in the middle of a pandemic, went the extra mile to vote. They figured out how to vote by mail, even though in a lot of states it wasn't easy to do or they hadn't done it before. They figured out how to vote early. And now in a number of these states, there are people that are trying to stop their freedom to vote. They're trying to take those provisions away from them. The money, the dark money in politics. What has that done? Why do you think it's so hard to pass bills to help the people of this country? It is all connected, and that's why this bill is so very important. So I chair the Senate Rules Committee, and I got to spend the last few months dealing with some of the people on the other side of the aisle on that committee. And I was also, by the way, so proud of the Democrats on the Rules Committee that got that bill done. And we put together a manager's amendment. We had hearings. We listened to what the secretaries of state said across the country, Democrats or Republicans. We listened to them. We made changes to the bill. And then we tried to pass those sensible changes, and the Republicans blocked those changes. But that manager's amendment, which was supported by every single member of the Rules Committee, including, by the way, Senator Warner and Senator Angus King, who are known as more moderates in our caucus, they supported that manager's amendment, and then the Republicans blocked it. But I can tell you, in meeting after meeting with Democrats, we're ready to find a path forward and to move forward with this bill. So, what did I hear from Senator Cruz and Senator McConnell, who are members of my committee? What did I hear? Well, they would say things about chaos. Well, I can tell you what chaos is, my friends. Chaos is voters standing in line in Milwaukee in garbage bags and homemade masks in the middle of a thunderstorm just to exercise their right to vote. That's what chaos is, but they did it. Chaos is people in Texas, in Harris County, Texas, a county of over 5 million people, with one ballot drop-off box. People still willing to find that box and go to get that box. Chaos is what you heard from a circuit court out of North Carolina after the legislature there passed a bill that the even conservative judges on that court said discriminated with surgical precision. Chaos is what we saw in South Carolina, where people who had COVID and were in the hospital in order to get their mail-in ballot, and they still have to do this, were in a hospital room having a notary outside of the glass because their law required that they have a notary to sign their request for an absentee ballot. That is chaos. And chaos is people standing in line in Georgia who now aren't even allowed to get water from volunteers. That is chaos. So if people ask me why I care so much about this, for me, this is it. This is a game. This is our democracy. And that you're willing to come out here on a hot day knowing that our path is not easy. But nothing about democracy has ever been easy. It has been hard from the very beginning. Bringing people in has been hard because, as Reverend Warnock said, some people don't want some people to vote. And it is our job to tell the nation that that is exactly what's going on here and that we will win and we will prevail in the end. Let's get this done. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Okay, speaking of Reverend Warnock, let's just go in and bring him to the stage. Y'all give it up for Reverend Warnock. This is going to get easier, I promise.
Thank you. Well, hello, everybody. Sisters and brothers, we are in a 911 emergency when it comes to our democracy. And it's so important that we not miss this moment, that we misapprehend the gravity and the significance of what we will do in this moment. I've only been in the Senate a little while. And I've already been there long enough to realize that it's easy for folk who become a part of this institution to become cynical, to say that we go and we debate various issues, and there is a practical side. We debate certain things, we win some, we lose some, we come back to the next Congress. But let me be very clear, this is not just some ordinary moment. What they are trying to do in Georgia and all across this country is to squeeze the voices of the people out of their democracy such that they can have minority rule, and we will not allow that to happen. I'm a proud son of Georgia. Don't talk bad about my state. I love Georgia. And all of you out here owe a debt of gratitude to Georgia. Right? Who would have thought that at the end of the election on November 4th, that we would be waiting to see who would have the majority in the Senate? And who would have thought that both of those seats that we needed to win would be in one state? And of all the states, it would be Georgia. And who would have thought that Georgia would deliver? But Georgia delivered. And my mother, who grew up in Waycross, Georgia. Y'all know where that is? way across Georgia. My mother grew up in the 1950s picking somebody else's cotton and somebody else's tobacco. But because this is America, the 83-year-old hands that used to pick somebody else's tobacco and somebody else's cotton picked her youngest son to be a United States Senator. But I've never been interested in being in a position just to say I'm in a position. Whatever platform you have, you ought to leverage it for good in the world. And the most important thing we can do in this Congress is pass voting rights. Because after all, that's the only reason any of us serves in the Congress in the first place. Somebody had to elect us. We might sit in these seats, but we don't own these seats. They belong to the people, and the people ought to be able to determine who represents them. So thank you so very much. I'm proud of you. I'm inspired by you. I'm going to fight the good fight. Are you with us? Are you ready to fight? Are you ready to stand up for voting rights? Are you ready to pass voting rights no matter what? So don't be fooled now. Because some folk are saying, well, we're for voting rights, and so let's just pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act. This is not a decision between either or, it's both and. We need the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act. It has a powerful tool called pre-clearance. And pre-clearance stopped a whole lot of bad things happening for decades. It meant that states with a history of discrimination, like my beloved state of Georgia. I mean, think about the arc of our history. When I was born in 1969, Georgia's two senators were Richard B. Russell and Herman Talmadge, two art segregationists. Herman Talmadge's father was Eugene Talmadge, the governor of Georgia, who said, we in the South love the Negro in his place. And his place is at the back door. But because this is America, because we always have a path to make our country greater, I now sit in the seat that Herman Talmadge used to sit in. So we have to continue to push us closer towards our ideals as a country. So the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act is important because that powerful tool, pre-clearance, helped a lot of bad things stopped a lot of bad things from happening. What they did after my election and John Ossoff's election and so many elections all across our country is that they saw the emerging American electorate. And they decided that we're going to do something about that. Folk in power, driven by craven politicians and folk who are greedy, said we're going to hold on to the country no matter what. And so they passed all of these voter suppression bills, and the John Lewis Advancement Act, as important as it is, it won't do a thing to push back what happened in Georgia a few months ago. And so we have to expand the cords of our democracy. We have to provide minimal standards for our elections. That is the job of the Congress. And if the Congress won't defend the people's voices in their own democracy, we have failed to do our job in the most basic way. I love the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, but be very clear, John Lewis, I ought to know I was his pastor. Okay. Tell us the story. John Lewis spent his last 10 years fighting for the provisions in the For the People Act. And so in his memory, and to secure the democracy for all of our children, we have to stand up in this defining moment in America. We can't dance around Senate procedure. No Senate procedure, no Senate rule is more important than people's constitutional rights. John Lewis understood that. And so as I close, and nobody believes a Baptist preacher when he says I close, I had the honor of presiding over John Lewis's funeral last summer. And as I was preparing for that, I asked myself, I wonder what he was thinking about when he was getting ready to cross that bridge. Here's what I know he was not thinking about. It never occurred to him that he would one day win a Presidential Medal of Freedom. That's not why he did it. It never occurred to him that at his death, 3 American presidents from both sides of the aisle would be there to pay him homage. That's not why he did it. He did it because he believed in the covenant that we have with one another as an American people. And sometimes we talk about the civil rights movement as if it rolled in on the wheels of inevitability. These were improbable victories. And so I don't listen to people who tell me that we can't pass voting rights in this Congress. We can pass voting rights in this Congress. John Lewis had no reason to believe that he could win when he crossed that bridge, but he decided to lay it all on the line. I think the biggest thing was, can I survive? He was hoping just to live to fight another day, and he crossed that bridge. And so as I close, I said all of that to say to you that we have yet another bridge to cross in this American democracy. We have to make sure that black people can vote, that brown people can vote, that young people can vote, that women can vote. We've got to make sure that everybody has a voice in their democracy and that working people have access to the polls. That's why we've got to have drop-off boxes. That's why we've got to have early voting. And we will not allow them to steal our democracy. So in the name of John Lewis, who told us to keep crossing every bridge and to keep stirring up good trouble, in the name of Medgar Evers, who was shot down like a dog in his own driveway, in the name of Fannie Lou Hamer, who said, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired, in the name of Viola Luiso, a white woman who died because she understood that this is the covenant we have with one another, in the name of Schwerner, Cheney, and Goodman, 2 Jews and an African American who stood up for voting rights, we must stand up in this defining moment in America. Are you ready to fight? Are you ready to fight? Are you ready to fight? Let's stand together. Let's work together. Let's vote together. Let's pray together. Let's hope together. Together we will win.
Thank you so much, Reverend Senator Warnock. We are so honored to have so many of our powerful champions of For the People Act here with us today. Our next speaker is one of the strongest proponents we have of all of the provisions, the voting rights provisions, the small donor public financing provisions, and all of the incredible things that are in For the People Act. I'd like to invite to the stage Representative Mondaire Jones.
I don't know why y'all made me go after the preacher and the distinguished senator from the state of Georgia. Amen? Good trouble. Necessary trouble. On one occasion, John Lewis confronted what he called a threat to democracy as we know it. States were keeping millions of voters from the polls, and tens of millions of more voters could not easily register. Our democracy was under attack. So John Lewis championed a bill to protect it. That was not 1965. It was the year 2012. And the bill John Lewis called for wasn't the Voting Rights Act, as important as it is. It was the precursor to what is known today as the For the People Act. Ultimately, John Lewis's final fight for our democracy was to champion the For the People Act. And today we stand just one vote away from winning that fight, don't we? One vote away from passing the For the People Act. One vote away. And on behalf of the hundreds of thousands of Americans who signed these petitions, we have gathered here to call on the distinguished senator from West Virginia to cast that deciding vote. Because despite what Mitch McConnell would have us believe, we know that now is not the moment to give up. Now is the moment to show that the American people will not compromise with corruption, racism, insurrection, and minority rule. Now is the moment for each and every one of our senators to fulfill their oath to support and defend our democracy. Now is the moment for President Biden to rise to the occasion and use all of the resources available to him as the most powerful person on the planet to step forward and keep President Lincoln's promise that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish. Unlike John Lewis's generation, we are not called to risk our lives here today, though many of us did on January 6th. We are merely called to exercise the rights they helped to win, our votes and our voices. And I know that this will not be easy. I know it isn't. Many of you have been fighting for this for a very long time. But I often remind myself of what John Lewis said as he cast his vote for the For the People Act last Congress. And of course, I'm grateful to the senator from West Virginia for being an original co-sponsor in the last Congress of the For the People Act. If not us, then who? If not now, then when? The time has come, hasn't it? So it's up to us. We cannot rely on other people to do the right thing. I think that's clear. The moment is now, isn't it? Can there be any doubt that we are in the fight of our lives? American democracy and the future of the republic hangs in the balance, and we have only got a few months left. And we cannot afford to wait. Thank you.
All right. So this is a pep rally, right? So we should raise the energy, right? Okay. So when I say for the, you say people. For the people. For the people. When I say for the, you say people. For the people. For the people. Okay, we're going to bring up our next speaker. Y'all give it up for Sharice Davids. Yes.
This is the one time being short is actually helpful, because I saw the senator, Reverend Senator, and my colleague Mondaire they were hollering, but they weren't that close to the mic because they're very tall. Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for being here. Thanks for having me. It's too hot. I had to take the blazer off. I appreciate so many of you coming out to show your support for and hear about the urgent needs that we have. This is urgent. This is a 5-alarm fire. I think we heard it called a 911 situation. At the end of the day, this is about literally the core of our democracy. And if we don't do it now, we might not have a democracy. Who would have thought, when so many of us ran in 2018 and helped change expectations about who gets elected and how we support people, that we were literally in the fight of our lifetimes to make sure that our country would continue on so that we could hear from senators, from congresspeople, and from everyday citizens who have the opportunities they have because we have such a strong democracy, because we have freedoms in this country that allow for someone like me to get elected in a state like Kansas. So Kansas has a rich and progressive history, and it's still part of what we're proud of in our state today. Unfortunately, for folks who probably already know this, Kansas is also responsible for Chris Kobach, and I'm sorry about that. We're working on it. Kansas is also the home of the Koch brothers, who, yeah, I'm not going to stop you guys from booing. We're working on that too. Because a lot of the reasons that we're here today actually stem from so much of the work that people like Chris Kobach and the Koch brothers have been doing for way too long. Dark money in politics, suppressing the vote, and at the end of the day, making it so that people like my mom, my mom was in the Army for 20 years. She raised, and she was a drill sergeant. I've got the push-ups to prove it. She raised my brothers and I by herself. And then after she left the Army, 20 years, 23 days, she went to the post office. My mom worked at the post office for 20 years. She just retired. Congratulations, Mommy. She just retired. Why do people like the Koch brothers have more influence in our democracy than people like my mom? It's unacceptable. It's unacceptable. And I live in a state where right now, unfortunately, the extreme Kansas GOP, we have a legislature that is trying to do what we're seeing across the country. Maybe the guys in Kansas are being a little more explicit about it. They have said, literally, we will draw maps that will make it so that Sharice Davids cannot win. Good luck. But what we're seeing is that we have states like Kansas where the redistricting process is controlled by a partisan committee, where we've got politicians who are more interested in, and I know this isn't an original thought because I've heard it a number of times today, we've got politicians who are trying to decide who their voters are instead of the other way around. Yes, this is a Wizard of Oz joke. So, what are we going to do about it? First of all, in the House, we passed the For the People Act. Bipartisan, everywhere else but in D.C., apparently. People want to have a say in who they elect. People want their vote to count. People want to make sure that their grandparents' votes count, that their parents' votes, their siblings, their children, and that's what we're fighting for, right? To make sure that literally every eligible voter is able to get registered, to cast their ballot, to have their vote counted, and that we can do something about it if their vote doesn't get counted. So what we've got in Kansas and all over the country are folks who are scared about being able to freely and safely cast their ballot. And I know that the folks in my district support, the Kansas 3rd District, support passage of the For the People Act. I know tons of people here today, people all over the country, support passage of the For the People Act. What we need right now is for our colleagues on the Senate side to listen to their constituents. Because I'm talking to our Republican colleagues too. This is not just on the Democrats. Mitch McConnell, wow, even the microphone didn't like that. Get your folks in line. Help make sure that we continue to have a democracy. Because we need the For the People Act passed. We need to get dark money out of politics. We need to make sure that people like the Koch brothers don't have more power than people like my mom in our democracy. And we need to make sure that we continue to make our voices heard in venues like this and at the ballot box. Thank you all for being here. Thanks for the hard work. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman Sharice Davids. So honored to have you here. We'll be joined by some more senators, congresspeople, and local elected officials shortly. But next, I'd like to invite to the stage my boss and president of People for the American Way, Ben Jealous.
Well, good afternoon. They did not put me and the Congresswoman in like the same height group. So let me just adjust this microphone. Good afternoon. We are here because we the people have decided we don't like billionaires buying our elections. We the people, we've decided we don't like voter suppression. The For the People Act is the product of the hopes and dreams of 80% of the people of our country. A majority of Democrats, a majority of independents, a majority of, yes, Republicans. The Republicans in the Senate may have lost their mind, but the people who are Republicans haven't. The other day, the Koch brothers lost their mind when they were caught on a conference call about this bill, about all the millions the Koch brothers are investing to kill this bill. And they literally had an apoplectic moment on the call where they said, their strategist said to them, it turns out we shouldn't really talk about what's in the bill because the majority of Republicans don't like billionaires buying their elections either. OMG. We, the American people, actually agree on some things. Now, you heard from Reverend Warnock today, we need to build that bridge. We need to cross that bridge. We need to get Joe Manchin across that bridge. Don't get me thinking about pushing him and bridges. What I would say is this, y'all. Inaction is not an option. Our democracy is at stake. The people have been clear. And Joe Manchin needs to understand that what 80% of the American people agree on, guess what? West Virginians overwhelmingly agree on too. And Kristen Sinema needs to understand that what 80% of the American people agree on, overwhelmingly Arizonans agree on too. And Murkowski has to understand that what overwhelmingly the American people agree on, overwhelmingly Alaskans agree on too. No, failure is not an option. And we will not fail. We will simply fight until the end. And we are willing to fight until the end, which means we will win in the end. Brothers and sisters, we got about 3 months to get this done. Please don't plan long summer vacations. Plan to be on those phones, plan to be on your texts, plan to be calling your neighbors, writing postcards, whatever you need to do to make sure that the voices get to Murkowski, that the voices get to Sinema, that the voices of the people get to Manchin so that they can cross that bridge that John Lewis was building for the last 5 years of his life. Thank you and God bless.
All right. So, y'all enjoying yourselves listening to the speakers? Okay, we're going to bring up another one. Give it up for Senator Padilla.
Good morning, everybody. Now, we all know why we're here. And we all know time is of the essence, right? Why are we here? Because despite the success of the 2020 election, one that saw historic turnout during a global health pandemic, Republican legislators across the country are hell-bent on rolling back the clock on voting rights. That's why we need the For the People Act. And we need it now. To think that after a successful election, we're seeing more than 360 bills to restrict access to the ballot is unconscionable. Now, Republican legislators clearly want to suppress the vote. They want to suppress our voices, and they're very intentional about it. The way these laws are written are a direct attack on the political voices of communities of color, of young people, and working families, and we're not going to stand for it. Now, I know some of the critics of the For the People Act have suggested falsely that we're seeking to federalize elections, a federal takeover elections. Nothing could be further from the truth. What we are asking for, what the American people demand and deserve, is the federal baseline of voting rights and access to the ballot for every voter in America. And the measures, the reforms called for in the For the People Act aren't just what we think are good ideas and we'll cross our fingers and hope they work. We know they work. I know they work. For the prior 6 years, I was Secretary of State for the state of California, where we built the most inclusive democracy of any state in the nation. These reforms work. They lead to more participation, safer elections, and a stronger democracy, and the whole world, the whole country deserves the same. Thank you for your advocacy. Let's light up those phones, fire off those text messages. Let's get this done.
Let's give it up for Senator Padilla. Yeah. All right, we've got more senators on the way here, but in the meantime, we're going to invite the CEO of the League of Women Voters, Virginia K. Solomon, to the stage.
How's everyone doing today? Is it hot enough for you? Not as hot as about to get in Congress as soon as we deliver these petitions. I want to thank all of our friends and allies here today and the distinguished members of Congress and everyone who is joining us today. Again, my name is Virginia K. Solomon. I am the CEO of the League of Women Voters of the United States. Folks, I'm not going to lie. Whoop. We're in crisis. Our democracy is in clear and present danger. And there are threats, many, that we face. When I see my beloved capital in my city caged in right now, we know that these threats have not gone away. And we know them because we see them every single day. Hundreds of new anti-voting rights bills just in the last 6 months. Think about it. Trying to silence our voices. And these divisive voter suppression bills disproportionately target Black, brown, women voters, young people. Why? They want to take us back to the era of Jim Crow. But are we going to let them? And there are some who say that our democracy is okay. It did what it was supposed to do last election. But I disagree. We made it do what it was supposed to do the last election. I say that democracy worked because people of goodwill in this country, we made it work. But it almost didn't. And the threat has not passed. It still exists. And it is clear as day. We all see it. But we have a solution. We can do something about it. We have the opportunity right now to right the ship and to restore the trust of the American people. We have the opportunity to ensure that the voting obstacles of 2020 and the continued challenges and threats to our democracy live in the history books where they belong. We have the opportunity to shape a democracy that is truly of, by, and for the people. politicians cannot rise to meet this moment as they should, if they cannot put party loyalty aside and pass this bill for the people, then shame on them. They will meet the wrath of the American people at the voting booth. We have the power to change the system right now, in this moment, to build on the promise of America. And we don't want to look back on this moment and wish we had done more. The future is here. This is the wake-up call. Now is the time to act. Now is the time to pass the For the People Act. Thank you all. Call your congressmen, call your senators, make it known, call Joe Manchin, Kristen Sinema, and every single Republican, and let them know that we want the For the People Act now. Thank you.
Yo, a chant. This is what democracy looks like, okay? So, is this what democracy looks like? Is this what democracy looks like? There's a whole group of people over here who aren't using their voices, so we're gonna all do it again for them. Okay. Is this what democracy looks like?
This is what democracy looks like.
Is this what democracy looks like?
This is what democracy looks
It
like.
sure is, and we're going to bring up Senator Gillibrand. Thank you.
All right. Good morning, everybody. I am so happy to see this crowd of people here fighting for what's most important in our country, and that's our rights to vote, our democracy. And we need to fight for those things because they are under attack. They're under attack all across this country. So we have to marshal our strength, marshal our voices, marshal our will to make sure we are heard in this very important issue. In the last election, we saw voters turn out in record numbers. We saw people helping their friends and neighbors get registered and get to the polls. We saw people driving great distances when their polling places were moved or closed. We saw people waiting in line for hours in the cold or in the heat or in the rain. We saw people clear hurdle after hurdle to get to the voting booth because they know that that is the one place where their voice is as loud and it is powerful as anyone else in the country. It is where our voice is equal. It is where our voice can be heard. But instead of working to fix the problems that made it too hard for too many people to actually vote, we are seeing lawyers and workers across this country actively making it harder to vote for so many people. In state after state, in Texas, in Georgia, Arizona, and Florida, the right to vote, the cornerstone of our democracy, is under attack. We claim to be the government of the people, by the people, and for the people. But too often, government has been in the business of deciding which people exactly get to participate. That is not democracy, and that is not the country we know and love. We have to protect our democracy and protect the right to vote, and we have to act now because everything we care about is at stake. As my friend, the civil rights icon John Lewis so eloquently put it, the right to vote is precious, almost sacred. People fought for it, bled for it, and died for it. Honor their sacrifice. It is up to us today to honor that sacrifice. It's up to us to protect these voting rights. Before he passed, John and I worked together for years on the Voter Empowerment Act, which is now part of the For the People Act. That legislation would modernize voting registration and voting, help protect voters from misinformation, and ensure every vote cast is counted. These are common sense reforms. Let's pass them now. We will pass For the People Act. We will pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. We together will fight every step of the way to keep our democracy. So let's not take no for an answer. The stakes are too high. I will not give up in this fight. You will not give up in this fight. Together we will succeed. Together we will be heard. And together we will protect this country that we love. God bless America.
Thank you, Senator Gillibrand. When I say for the, you say people. For the. People. For the. People. When I say for the, you say people. For the. People. For the. People. All right, next we'd like to invite to the stage the president of the American Federation of Teachers, Randy Weingarten.
Are you ready to fight? Yeah. I can't hear you. Are you ready to fight? Yeah. Well, the first thing I want to say is I want to say thank you to everyone who is right here, right now, because you are the activists who have been fighting for the people. This is a fight not only for S1 or HR1. This is a fight for our democracy. I'm a social studies teacher. You know me as the president of the AFT, but I'm a social studies teacher. I have watched this year the same states who are trying to suppress the vote, the 14 of them, also trying to silence what we as social studies teachers try to teach our children. I want to spend my moments talking about the urgency of now and actually saying we don't have a choice but to fight this fight right now. You think about how hot it is right here, right now. Think about how water is being passed through this crowd. What happens now in the future in Georgia when there are now reduced number of polling places, when there is a reduced ability to vote early, and they have now criminalized or made it hard for activists like any of us to pass water out to people who are trying to vote. This is the urgency of now. What happens when you have a state like Arizona or Michigan or Pennsylvania where the votes come in slowly because of outdated infrastructure, as Senator Gillibrand just said was needed? Sorry, I don't know why we're... What happens when the people vote and make a choice and then a state legislature attempts to overturn that? I'm using these two examples for a reason. This is the urgency of now. We can talk in sound bites. We can talk about solutions. But most importantly, all of us, yes, we have to thank our senators, but we need all of us to make sure the people in our communities understand that the people are about to be robbed. The people are about to be robbed of their vote and of their voice and of their democracy. So my question is to you, Are you willing to fight? Are you willing to do everything we can to keep our democracy? Are you willing to stand up and be heard? Are you willing to march to Congress every day? Are you willing to talk to people in our communities? Are you willing to talk to your kids? Are you willing to talk to your neighbors? Are you willing to make sure when the people vote, they will be heard? And if we do that, we will build the bridge that Senator Warnock talked about, and we will save our democracy.
I said when voting rights are under attack, what do we do? Okay, so some of y'all know the chant. So the answer is stand up, fight back. When voting rights are under attack, what do you do?
Stand up, fight back.
That was great. We'll try it again. When voting rights are under attack, what do you do?
Stand up, fight back.
When health care is under attack, what do you do?
Stand up, fight back.
Okay, I just want to make sure it was the same answer. Next, we are bringing up to the stage Representative Sarbanes. Y'all give it up from my home state.
Hey, everybody. So we have a bill that America supports. The For the People Act is supported by Democrats, independents, and Republicans from all across the country, in every single state, including in the state of West Virginia. Broad majorities of patriotic Americans who want to get their democracy back. This is not a surprise, and let me tell you why. We built the For the People Act based on what Americans of all political stripes were telling us over the last few years. They said we want to be able to get to the ballot box every 2 years without having to run an obstacle course. So we incorporated into H.R. 1S1, the For the People Act, John Lewis's Voter Empowerment Act, as you just heard. He wrote the first 300 pages of the For the People Act to make sure that every American in every part of this country can access the ballot box when they get up on the morning of the day they've decided to cast their vote, whether it's filling in an oval on an absentee ballot sitting at their kitchen table, or going to an early voting center, or showing up on election day. They ought to be able to do that with confidence and not have to have 4 or 5 contingency plans about whether they can actually exercise their right to vote. So we need to protect the freedom to vote, and we put that into H.R. 1S1, the For the People Act. People told us, people said to us, politicians should not choose the voters should choose the politicians. So we made a fix to partisan gerrymandering, and that is in the For the People Act, to respect the voters. We heard the public's anxiety about foreign actors interfering in our elections, hacking into our election systems. So we put provisions into the For the People Act that will protect our democracy against that kind of attack. That's in the For the People Act. We wanted to restore a culture of ethics and accountability because the people were telling us that they had lost faith in Washington. So we have lobbying rules and requirements in there, transparency, accountability, and ethics restored here in Washington so the voice of the people is respected in the country. And the last thing we heard, and we hear it every day from cynical Americans out there who feel left out, left behind, marginalized, pushed to the side of their own democracy, is when you get to Washington, remember who sent you there. Don't get tangled up in the money. Don't let the special interests and the super PACs call the shots. Respect the voice of the people. So we put provisions in the For the People Act to respond to that grievance, that concern, to lift up Americans, to fight back, to make their voice the one that calls the shots here in Washington, pushing back against super PACs, transparency on the big money, and building a new system for funding campaigns in America that matches the voice of small donors, lifts them up, gives you ownership of your own democracy, and pushes back against the special interests. So it is no surprise that this bill is supported by broad majorities of Americans of all political stripes, because it was drafted for the people. It was introduced for the people. It was debated for the people. It was passed on March 3rd in the House of Representatives for the people. It is being debated and will be passed in the United States Senate for the people. And it will go to the desk of President Biden to be signed into law for the people. Let's go do this. Thank you all very much.
Let's give it up again for Congressman John Sarbanes, the chief architect of For the People Act, H.R. 1 in the House. He's been such a leader on this for so many years, and we are so grateful and honored to continue to collaborate with him. I'd like to invite our next speaker to the stage. He's one of the strongest advocates against the corporate takeover of our democracy in the Senate, Senator Sheldon Whitehouse.
Thank you, everybody. Good to be with you. Thank you for being a voice at this unbelievably important moment in American history. We are not presented with an easy path forward. But that does not mean we do not have a path forward. If you go back to the difficult days of Abraham Lincoln, at one point he said, "Let it be resolved that this can and should be done, and we will find the way." One of the great mountain climbers of the world said, "Once you resolve to undertake your mission, it moves the fates. Things that would never happen begin to happen because you began." So let us be sure to begin, and let us have the resolution to make sure that we see this through to the end. And thank you particularly for holding this in front of the United States Supreme Court, the captured court that has done so much evil to our democracy, giving a clear path to partisan gerrymandering when lower courts had showed them an easy solution, opening up unlimited money into our politics, and then refusing to enforce the transparency part that had opened the door for unlimited money. So we didn't just get unlimited money from Citizens United, we got unlimited, anonymous, corrupting money. And now they have taken a case where they are looking to give anonymous, unlimited, corrupting money a constitutional right. We cannot let that happen. We got to keep the spotlight on the 6 Republicans in the building behind me who are the servants of right-wing dark money interess. That is no place for a court to be in our great republic, and we have got to call it out. So be resolved, be determined, understand that there may be detours in the pathway. It may be a steeper climb than we had thought, but we have fought bigger battles before and won them. America has always come out on top, and we will too here. So keep the faith, keep the work. God bless you.
Thank you so much, Senator Whitehouse. So now we are very excited to unfurl our special visual aid for the day. Some of you may have seen we've been gathering petition signatures for weeks and months and really years now. We've got some of the hundreds of thousands that we're going to unfurl right now. These are Americans from all across the country who have signed petitions in support of the For the People Act. These signatures have been gathered by some of the more than 200 organizations that make up the Declaration for American Democracy. We've been organizing for years to get where we are now, and it is such an incredible moment to see the amount of support that For the People Act has in the House, in the Senate, and all across the country. Believe it or not, it's not a partisan issue. In fact, it's very bipartisan. Republicans, Democrats, independents, all across the country, voters in particular, support these reforms. Unfortunately, the only place where it's not bipartisan currently is in Congress, but we do intend to change that with the incredible organizing capacity that we have as a coalition and as individual organizations. So we're going to continue to unfurl this banner here, let the photographers capture this powerful image. These are just some of the hundreds of thousands of signatures that we've gathered, which is really just a fraction of the tens of millions of members that we collectively represent at the Declaration for American Democracy. And signatures are just one thing that we've been doing in the recent years. We've been driving countless calls into Congress to build support for the People Act in the House when it was H.R. 1 and now S1 in the Senate. We've been organizing events virtually during the pandemic, obviously, but then also in person before then, and then beginning to organize in person as well again now, doing lobby visits virtually and in person, writing letters to the editor, writing op-eds, doing tons of social media, getting For the People Act talked about in the news. It's really been an incredible collaboration and really an amazing transformation from what was sort of an obscure amalgamation of different reforms, voting rights, small donor public financing, redistricting to address gerrymandering, into this broad, ambitious, comprehensive package that is really the sweeping set of reforms that we need right now in this country. And the Declaration for American Democracy has been doing so much to mobilize the grassroots, but then also work with our allies on the Hill and inject the narrative about this important legislation into the media as well. So we encourage everyone watching at home and here today to join us. DeclarationForAmericanDemocracy.org is the coalition. Again, I'm with People for the American Way. We're one of the 200 groups, so you can get involved with any one of the groups and lend your voice to this critically important effort by signing petitions and engaging in all different types of advocacy and activism to support this important bill. So with all of that said, we're going to go ahead and invite our next speaker to the podium. I'd like to invite the Strategic Advisor for Southern Poverty Law Center Action Fund, Jasmine Tyler. Jasmine.
Hey, everybody. Good morning. Thank you. Thank you for being out here. Can you believe we are out here to protect the pillar of our democracy? Doesn't sound crazy? Shouldn't that just be what we do? Well, I am here, as you heard, representing the Southern Poverty Law Center's Action Fund. We hail from over here, the Deep South, and that's where we work to overcome all of the structural and oppressive policies that our folks have been dealing with for too long, centuries. Thank you. I feel it out there. Just want to let you know that SPLC has also engaged in some of this polling that you've heard about. It's still bipartisan. In May, we heard 2/3 of voters wanted to have the For the People Act passed. So we're still waiting. We don't understand what the holdup is, except we do understand what the holdup is. Voter suppression is alive and well in the South. Okay? Do you hear me? Gerrymandering is alive and well in the South. Modern day poll taxes, yeah, back alive and well in the South. And that is what we are fighting, and with all of our partners on the ground and here in DC, fighting to overcome. That means we are not going to allow Rosemary McCoy in Florida to lose her restored right to vote just because she owes the court some fines. Okay? The Florida voters decided 4 million voters should come back on the rolls. They'd done their time. They were ready to be back, having a stake in their communities. Okay? It means folks like Eric Peoples, okay, in Alabama, who lives with a disability, cerebral palsy. He is in a wheelchair. It means we're going to make sure he has access to the polls. That people with disabilities aren't kept from exercising their right to vote. It means Kathy Allen in Georgia, her mail-in vote would get counted because she was away visiting her dying mother. We're doing all of this, because we know it's not just the high population of black voters who have been locked out, but it's a lot of our community, and we need all the voters in America to be able to exercise their right and be heard. Okay? So we contributed some signees to this petition. Can you see it? There's not even enough room to unfurl the whole thing. I love it. Hundreds of thousands of people lent their names to this. Some of them from these deep South states: Florida, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana. And we are proud to stand here with you all today from the Southern Poverty Law Center's Action Fund to say, pass it. Pass this For the People Act. Let's get it done. It's not just some of the Democrats that are a problem. Some of our Deep South senators, they're not standing with us either. We're thankful we have Senators Warnock and Ossoff who stand up for the people for a change. We're happy that some of the Deep South has taken a turn. It's not enough. We're suing in the states. We're suing at the court. We're doing the work, but we got to do it all together, and we got to get this bill passed. Thank you.
All right. So all of y'all who are have moved out, I know it's hot, but come in a little bit because we want to make this intimate. We want to continue this conversation. So if you're far away, come in a little closer. Maybe try to find your name on this list if you signed it, or on the map if you did. Okay, so again, we're going to bring up our next speaker, but before we do that, I just want to remind y'all that this is a pep rally, and there should be pep in not only your step, but in the way that we respond to the people who are up here, okay? Yeah. So don't just wait for your fave, give it up for everyone, okay? Yes, great. And with that, we're gonna bring up Robert Weissman, President of Public Citizen, okay? Give it up.
Let's give it up for Rhea. Get our pep up. Hey, brothers and sisters, bring it in a little bit. Let's get this going. Come on, no, actually, I'm talking to you over there. Yeah, come on over. Actually do it. Walk over. Interrupt the conversation. We have to interrupt business as usual. Brothers and sisters, with our democracy at a crossroads, our children and our children's children and our children's children's children are going to look back, and they are going to judge us. They are going to judge us for what we did at this time, at this moment, in this place. With our democracy under a kind of attack that we have never seen from multiple dimensions, from a resurgence of overt racial suppression, voter suppression, from the most elaborate computer-generated rigging of districts in the nation's history, to the buying of elections by billionaires. The challenge is in front of us. So the question they will ask about us, the judgment they will make of us, is did we protect and preserve and expand and improve our democracy, or did we let it fade away? Or did we let it fade away? Because the threats we face are as clear and evident and visible. The assault on our democracy is as clear and as visible as the assault was on that building over there. They are making it a crime to give water to people standing in line to vote. They have districts. I was trying to think of the metaphor to talk about what the districts look like, but there is no natural occurring phenomenon that looks like the rigged districts, so I had to give up. Do you know how bad the big money dominance of our elections is? Do you know how bad it is? 100 people are responsible for 70% of all the money that goes to super PACs. All but a couple of them are white people. But it's 100 people. It's the kind of thing we used to laugh about in so-called banana republics. But that's what our country is now experiencing. Not in the distant future, not as a hypothetical, not as some dark fantasy, but the world in which we live. So against that challenge, we choose to let it spin out of control because we know the path it's on. It gets locked in, it gets worse, and maybe unfixable if we don't act now. That's one option. Is that your option? There's another option. We've had these great champions. We have an amazing champion in the House and Representative Sarbanes and all these senators coming over, led by Senators Klobuchar and Merkley. We have the legislation, the For the People Act, along with the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, along with D.C. statehood. We have the legislation to meet the moment, not just to undo, to stop the damage, but to undo it and to make our democracy more real. I know what I want our kids to say about us, our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren. Not that we let the democratic experiment fritter away and collapse and evolve into a racist, fascist state, but that we stood up, that we faced the challenge, and we delivered on the promise of American democracy. That is not any choice. That's no choice. There's nothing to think about. There's only the next action to take, the next petition to sign, the next letter to send, the next member to lobby, the next sit-in to join, the next protest to turn out at. And when we do those things, as Representative Sarbanes said, we will deliver for the people. Thank you so much, brothers and sisters. We are going to get this thing done.
The people, for 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 the people. All right. Thank you, Rob, and thank you, everyone, for sticking it out here well into the second hour. I know it's a hot day. I want to let folks know that we actually have cold water in the back there by the tables. We also have free merch, T-shirts, buttons, stickers that say Pass the For the People Act. It's all free, so go get some, take it home, help spread the word. And yeah, let's do this thing. Our next speaker is Councilmember Robert White from the Washington, D.C. City Council. He's also a member of our Young Elected Officials Network at People for the American Way. Thanks so much.
Good afternoon. For the people. So here we are at the door of democracy, demanding that it be opened wider, saying that we're not going to keep waiting so long for this to happen. Today, as we look at the bill in front of us, S1, the For the People Act, knowing that it needs to be passed, I think about the work of people who've come before us. People also pushing for a greater, more expansive democracy. People like Frederick Douglass, one of many people who fought to expand the franchise to African American men. A success that we got 150 years ago that led to the likes of Barack Obama and many other young African American leaders. I'm thinking about the work of Sir Jonah Truth and Susan B. Anthony, who expanded the franchise for women so that we could see the likes of Vice President Kamala Harris and the undefeated Stacey Abrams. I'm also thinking about here in Washington, D.C., formerly incarcerated residents who led the way, who blazed the trail for a bill we passed locally last year to expand the franchise to every single incarcerated D.C. resident. Every one of these fights has been difficult, and this one is no different. But it's a fight that we have to fight, because every one of these fights to expand democracy is a plank in our climb toward a more perfect union. And here we are on the cusp of a democracy that, believe it or not, might be open to more people, might make it easier for people to vote, might push out dark money, get rid of gerrymandering, things that corrupt our democracy. Imagine that we might try to move past it. In our way, and this is what hurts me to the core, something I can't understand. I see some elected officials, some products of democracy, spend more time defending people who stormed our Capitol to prevent democracy than they spend protecting the people trying to get into the ballot box. I see some of our elected officials who hold more closely the filibuster than the right for the people to vote. Something is wrong with that. What we say we have, what we try to have, what we fight for is a democracy. What I say is that when we put up fences, when we turn people away, when we say you can't give people water because they're when they're in line to vote, that people who have served their debt to society can't vote, we are building a fence around democracy. And the higher that fence is, the less we have a democracy, and the less we have social justice, which is supposed to be the result of our democracy. So we got to be encouraged. We have to keep fighting to pass S1, the For the People Act, to change the course of democracy for people who come behind us. And while we do that, please don't forget about the people of the 51st state, the District of Columbia, because we want our vote too. Let's pass the For the People Act.
DC, 51st state in the house. Yes, we out here. Yes. Okay, so next up, we're going to bring up Tiffany Muller from End Citizens United. Give it up. Like, sorry to be so delicate.
I think I'm good. I think I got this. Hello, everyone. How are you today? Let's hear this again. For the All right. I'm Tiffany Muller. I'm the president and executive director of End Citizens United and Let America Vote. And on behalf of our 4 million members, our mission's really simple. We want to get big money out of politics and stop voter suppression. And that's why we're so excited to be leading the fight for the For the People Act. Look, we always knew this fight was going to be hard, right? Because this fight is about power. It's about who has it and who doesn't. And we know that those who have power don't give it up willingly. Self-serving politicians and dark money special interests have been spending tens of millions of dollars to suppress the vote across America. And they've said they know that the only thing that can stop them is the For the People Act. So they're doubling down to stop passage of this bill in Congress. But guess what? We have something they don't. We have all of you.
We have the people. That's right. We have the people. And we're more powerful than their dark money, their lobbyists, and their special interest. And that's why we're here today, because we're sending a message to everyone in that building across the street that this is a fight that we're gonna win. So I want to thank all the senators and House members who have been here today, all of our allies and partners, because for their unwavering commitment to protecting our democracy, and to all of you who have been doing the hard work of organizing, making phone calls, texting, turning people out. But we're not done. We have 3 weeks until this vote, and we have to double down and redouble our efforts, because now is the time to join together and pass the For the People Act. So I have a favor to ask of all of you and everyone watching at home. I need you to go call your senator again. And then I need you to get 5 friends to go call their senators. And then I need you to not give up and dig in and fight for the People Act. Because I believe we're going to win this fight. I believe we can't afford not to. And I believe in all of us together. So let's go win this thing.
Okay. So when I say for the, you say for the, for the. When I say for the, you say for the, for the. Okay, so I'm going to fangirl a smidge. Coming up to speak, favorites, fan favorites. Everybody loves her. Y'all give it up for Elizabeth Warren from Massachusetts.
So what brings us here today? We are here because Republicans are afraid. We are here because Republicans are afraid of accountability. We faced an armed insurrection in this nation, and Republicans blocked an investigation. Trump's years in office, Trump's election, was marked by unprecedented levels of corruption, and Republicans block investigations. Republicans are afraid of accountability. Republicans are afraid of voters. They lost the House, they lost the Senate, they lost the White House. So their response has been to propose nearly 400 laws across this nation to keep American citizens who might vote for Democrats, to keep American citizens from voting. Republicans are afraid of voters. And Republicans are afraid of democracy. The right to vote is the beating heart of our democracy. And now that it is under attack all across this nation, Mitch McConnell and the Republicans want to use the filibuster to keep Congress from protecting our democracy. Republicans are afraid of losing power, and they are willing to crush our democracy to protect their power. So what are we going to do? We could hang back, we could pause, we could turn the other way while Republicans do this. Or we could fight back. I'm fighting back. We can fight back by passing S1 for the People Act. We fight back by overturning Republican efforts to strip away the vote. We fight back by protecting our democracy. Now look, I get it. We've had some bumps this week, but that doesn't mean that we give up. It means we double down. We fight back for our democracy. Look, the For the People Act is about the right to vote. It's about outlawing partisan gerrymandering, and it is about starting to clean the corruption out of Washington. And if Republicans in the Senate want to stand in our way, then we don't give up. We get rid of the filibuster. We cannot throw our democracy over a cliff in order to protect a Senate rule that isn't even part of the Constitution. We're here because we believe in our democracy and we are willing to fight for it. And when we fight, we will win. When we fight, we win. And when we fight, we win. Let's do this. All right. Thank you. Thank you.
Let's give it up again for Senator Elizabeth Warren. Thank you so much, Senator. So honored to have you with us here today. So obviously it's a tough act to follow, you know, Senator Warren, but we had to give it to somebody, so we decided to give it to a rabbi. I'd like to invite to the stage Rabbi Jonah Pesner on behalf of the Faithful Democracy Coalition.
Senator Elizabeth Warren, I need to teach you some Torah. It says in the Bible, thou shalt not follow Elizabeth Warren as a speaker. Can I get some amens? Thank you. Everybody say faith. Everybody say faith. Everybody say faith. Our faith is being tested. Our faith in democracy. Our faith in this enterprise of American democracy, which has in so much of its roots and so much of its history systemic racism and oppression, once again testing us. I'm Rabbi Jonah Pesner from the Religious Action Center of Reform Judaism, and our offices just a few blocks away is the site of the drafting of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. But if my friend, Reverend Dr. William Barber, were here right now, he would say, Rabbi, the Voting Rights Act was not written in your conference room. It was written in blood in Selma and transcribed in your conference room. Because power concedes nothing without pressure. And as Reverend Warnock invoked the names of Goodman and Cheney and Schwerner, who gave their lives for the right to vote, we know what's at stake. Representing faithful democracy, we are Muslims and Christians and Jews and Quakers and Baha'i and Hindu, people of all faiths, indigenous faiths to this nation, and all faiths and those who have no faith other than in the possibility of democracy and humanity. We are the mixed multitude that makes a demand. And that demand is made in the shadow of the sight of a white supremacist, racist insurrection in the name of the returned Confederacy that was fueled by anti-Muslim hate, anti-Jewish hate, anti-black and brown hate, anti-Native hate, and the hate goes on. We know that our safety comes in our solidarity. And family, our redemption as a nation may someday come through our democracy. So we people of all faiths and people of no faith come together with one clear demand. For the people. For the people. For the people. Amen, amen.
Okay, I hope everybody's over that that feeling. Everybody's feeling good still? Okay, that's what's up. So when I say for the, you say, okay, what does democracy look like? I still feel like this side, I don't know what is happening, a little bass. Okay, let's try it again. Is this what democracy looks like? This is what democracy looks like. Is this what democracy looks like? It does, it does, it does. Okay, and for that, keep your applause going for Edwith from Generation Progress. My bad.
Hello. How's everybody doing? My name is Edwith, and I'm with Generation Progress at Center for American Progress. We're the youth advocacy engagement arm. Do I have any millennials out here? Any Gen Z? I hear you. So everyone's been talking about that this is a pep rally. And when I think about a fully functioning democracy, I get excited and it makes me want to dance. So I'm going to ask the question again. Is this what democracy looks like? Is this what democracy looks like? And I want to see your dance moves. I'm going to ask again. Is this what democracy looks like? Is this what democracy looks like? Awesome, love it. You know, young people, we got to bring the flavor. So young people for the past year have been active and engaged players in our democracy. We've been like this since time has begun. You've seen us protest, you've seen us raise our voice, you've seen us do all the things, and this past election you saw us come out and vote. People under the age of 35 make up over 30% of the eligible electorate, and our generations are the most diverse in American history. I'm a daughter of immigrants, first generation, you know, queer, bi, all of the things. And our voices deserve to be heard. Last November, an estimated 50% of young people between the ages of 18 to 29 voted in the presidential election. That's an 11-point increase from 2016. This was likely one of the highest rates of youth electoral participation since the voting age was lowered to 18 by the passage of the 26th Amendment. Can I get an applause for the young people who came out and voted? In a global pandemic, but our participation has scared politicians who would rather us stay home. They took action, introducing over 360 bills to restrict voting access in 47 states. All of us are out here sweating and hot. Imagine we're out here voting and no one can even offer us a bottle of water. When states enact these complex and arbitrary voting restrictions that vary greatly from state to state, young people who are more likely to move frequently for school or work are often left out of the loop, forced to relearn new voting laws and anticipate randomly designated deadlines. They make it hard for a reason, right? Yep. For democracy to work for all of us, it must include all of us. The For the People Act protects young people's right to vote with tools like automatic voter registration, right? Awesome. Same-day voter registration, love to see it, and early voting. And For the People Act means more for young people than just voting rights. When the For the People Act becomes law, it will become law. Young people will continue to stand up for our values and our policy priorities. With our right to vote protected and the influence of dark money and special interest groups controlled, we believe that we will finally see progress on the issues that matter most to our generations, like gun violence prevention, climate change, and racial justice. We're out here taking to the streets, calling our senators, knocking on doors, flying to West Virginia, we see you, Manchin, and telling everyone that they need to pass the For the People Act. So, is this what democracy looks like?
This is what democracy looks like.
Young people are the future. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you so much, Edwith. So, as has been mentioned, the Declaration for American Democracy is made up of over 200 groups which work on so many different issues that are impacted by the health of our democracy. And the next speaker is going to be addressing one of those issues, the epidemic of gun violence in this country. I'd like to welcome to the stage Alea Eastman, the Team Enough leader with the Brady campaign.
Good morning. My name is Alea Eastman, and I'm a co-founder of Concerned Citizens of DC and the National Administrator of Team Enough, Brady's youth-led gun violence prevention initiative. I am also a survivor of gun violence after a gunman attacked my high school at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida in 2018. 17 of my classmates were murdered in my school that day, and another 17 were injured. I survived by hiding beneath the body of my classmate, Nicholas Doret, who was killed when the gunman opened fire in our classroom. My high school shooting is the deadliest high school shooting in modern American history, but we know that there has been as many as 300 fatal school shootings since the mass shooting at Columbine High School in 1999, before I was born. Gun violence will continue to skyrocket without new life-saving federal legislation, despite clear and loud citizens demanding change. Already, in 2021, there have been an estimated 19,000 deaths from gun violence, including over 250 mass shootings. What is standing in the way of action? Not the American people. The latest polls show broad and bipartisan support for policies like universal background checks. Some polls show that over 80% of all voters, including over 3/4 of Republicans and 82% of independents, support universal background checks. Yet action has stalled at the federal level because too many of our elected officials do not serve the public. Systemic and historic barriers to voting and special interest money have stopped action at the federal level. But we know we need much more than background checks to solve this epidemic. Gun violence disproportionately affects Black Americans in America. Black people are 10 times more likely to die from gun homicide than white people. Black youth are 14 times more likely than their white counterparts to die from gun homicide. Gun violence is the leading cause of death for Black youth. Passing the For the People Act will help topple barriers and blocks to voting and representation that affects Black siblings in our community. Those barriers and blocks have stopped meaningful change, like gun violence prevention, silencing and marginalizing the very community, my community, most affected by gun violence. Let me be clear. Those barriers are costing lives. We need the For the People Act. The For the People Act will not only help to remove entrenched barriers, but also stop the stranglehold of dark and special interest money that has allowed politicians to vote against life-saving popular policies for gun violence prevention. I'll happily name names. We're talking about the NRA. In 2019, the National Rifle Association spent $1.6 million lobbying Congress against passing gun safety legislation. The NRA has spent over $1.2 million in campaign contributions on Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell's campaign. In 2016, the NRA spent $30 million to elect Donald Trump. They were rewarded with not one, not two, but 3 Supreme Court justices. You want to see the downstream effects of special interest money and the barriers that have stopped Black and brown Americans from accessing the ballot and having their voices heard? Look no further than the fact that 100 Americans die from gun violence every day, and yet the NRA president, Wayne LaPierre, sat next to then President Trump to promote then nominee Neil Gorsuch. So I say it again, we need the For the People Act. We cannot accept special interest corporations buying our elections and our Supreme Court justices. The For the People Act will prevent billionaires and groups like the NRA from doing just that. The majority of Americans believe that our democracy should work for us and that we should have a say in our future. As you've already heard, this bill has passed in the U.S. House of Representatives, like many gun violence prevention bills before it, and we need it to pass in the U.S. Senate. I'm grateful for the senators here today demanding that this bill become a law. I am grateful to the 330,000 people across the country who have signed this petition demanding that this becomes a law. Today's rally and this petition are a reminder that the people of our country will not settle for a government that does not respond to our needs. I don't want any future generations to have to speak at rallies because their classmates were murdered around them. I don't want the next generation of Americans to watch as politicians are bought and sold by the NRA to stop life-saving gun legislations while their neighbors and friends are killed by communities and interpersonal gun violence all around them. So I say again, we need the For the People Act now. Thank you.
Y'all give it up for the young lady that was just here telling you about her story. Can you even imagine being able to have a conversation in this moment after you laid under somebody who was killed and under you for safety? Shit, sorry. Y'all, give it up for the young lady again, please, one more time. There's more than one reason why we need to pass this bill. And with that, we're going to bring up Matt Keller from Democracy 21. Give it up right now. Clap.
All right, thank you very much. Listen, 20 years ago, in that building over there, Senator John McCain stood on the floor of the United States Senate, and he said the system in Washington, D.C. is corrupt and it's immoral, and it's corrupt and it's immoral because it is awash in a sea of special interest money whereby the biggest donor gets a seat at the table of power to the exclusion of everybody else. And John McCain brought 9 other Republican senators with him to defeat the filibuster on the McCain-Feingold bill that was led yet again by Mitch McConnell. That was 20 years ago. We cannot get that same group of Republican senators to come with us on this transformational reform bill. That's not going to happen. And since that time, what's happened in the country as a result of Citizens United is the system is once again awash in a sea of special interest money whereby the biggest donors get access and a seat at the table of power. And we need to change that, and the way that we change that is to suspend and break the filibuster and bring the bill to the floor and vote on this bill because it is the only thing that will break the stranglehold of big money on American politics. And we can't wait, and we have to do it now. And it's happening at the state level. You see people, you see women running for office under public financing systems. In Arizona, Althea Salmon, who was a first-generation Palestinian American, won office. In Maine, a 26-year-old state senator, Chloe Maxman, won in a district that was carried by Susan Collins by 20 points because she took public money and she said, I could knock on the doors of my constituents and sell the Green New Deal even though it was a Republican district, and she won because she had the time to do that. It's Stephanie Thomas from Connecticut, who represents the wealthiest towns in Connecticut. She grew up in poverty in Newark, New Jersey. She took advantage of clean elections. She ran for office. She won, and she's supporting family leave bills in Connecticut. This is a stunning array of women who have taken advantage of these public financing systems and have won. So, Senator Manchin, and for all those who say it is not the time, we can't suspend the filibuster, we can't break the filibuster, it's got to be bipartisan. 58 years ago, Lyndon Johnson came to the presidency after John F. Kennedy was killed, and he said, my first priority is to pass John F. Kennedy's Civil Rights Act. And his aides pushed against him and said, Mr. President, if you do this, it is unlikely that you will win re-election. Johnson threw up his hands and said, if you can't do something big, then what the hell is the presidency for? And so I want to say to Senator Manchin, if you can't bring this bill to the floor and support transformational reform and the most sweeping civil rights bill in 50 years, then what the hell is the Senate for? Thank you.
When I say for the, you say people. For the. People. For the. People. When I say for the, you say people. For the. People. For the. People. All right. Thanks for sticking it out with us. We're in our closing third, at least. We're almost on schedule. We're a little bit behind. Thanks to all of our speakers so far. Next, I'd like to invite to the stage Sylvia Albert. She's the Director of Voting and Elections at Common Cause. Give it up for Sylvia.
Good morning. I'm Sylvia Albert from Common Cause, and I'm excited to be here on behalf of our 1.5 million members and activists to deliver a clear message to the Senate. It's time to build a democracy that works for everybody, and we need to pass the For the People Act now. It's time to protect our freedom to vote and expand voting rights so they work for the people. It's time to get big money out of politics and change our campaign finance laws so they work for the people. It's time to end partisan gerrymandering so everyone has a voice and real representation in government with fair maps that work for the people. And it's time to hold politicians accountable with common sense, ironclad ethics rules that work for the people. We can build a democracy where we all have a voice and everyone's vote is counted. We can beat the special interests and political donors that divide us and set the agenda. With the For the People Act, we the people can determine our shared future. After all, that's how democracy is supposed to work. And let me be clear, we're not going to let one op-ed by a US senator or a filibuster by Mitch McConnell deter us. In President Biden's words, we're going to fight like heck to pass the bill and deliver the promise of democracy to everyone. Let's get to work. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to keep it going. I just want you to know that we are doing great. We're doing great on time. And everybody out here, I appreciate you standing with us and staying throughout the time. Those clouds are going to hold so that it doesn't rain on our heads, okay? Right? Right? Yeah, okay. Cool. So we're going to bring up next the director from All on the Line, Samya Nadachenya.
Hello. How's everybody doing? Thank you all for staying out here. Thank you to all the advocates, the congressfolk, the senators. This is too important. I'm here as the director of states with All on the Line because we can't wait. We can't wait to pass the For the People Act. There's too much at stake. Our democracy is on the line. But you know what that means? That means our health care is on the line. It means that climate change is on the line. It means that gun violence prevention is on the line. All of these things can get progress if we pass the For the People Act. We have to pass the For the People Act. We are in the middle of an unprecedented attack on our democracy. Nearly 400 bills have been passed or have been introduced in 48 states, right? These bills, all part of the big lie, some of them becoming law, are misguided. Misguided politicians think that they can choose who their voters are and how people get to vote. That's not how this works. The For the People Act is the right bill at the right time because it does a couple of different things. One, it puts voting rights protections into law. Two, it bans partisan gerrymandering and makes sure that nonpartisan commissions can end up drawing these maps. And three, it limits the influence of dark money in politics. It is also broadly popular. It is a bipartisan bill. The people are for this bill. Democrats, independents, and Republicans have signaled support for various measures, all the measures in this bill. One of the most popular provisions is to protect against unfair cheating. That is gerrymandering, against map manipulation, against politicians choosing their voters instead of the other way around. It's no coincidence that some of the worst voter suppression laws being introduced in places like Texas and Georgia are also coming from some of the most gerrymandered state legislatures. That's no accident. And so they are playing to the special interests, the extremes of a party, rather than listening to the people just so they can hold on to power. Gerrymandering is preventing meaningful progress on all those issues I talked about before. We need the For the People Act, and we need the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act. We need both. This fight isn't over. We're staying with it, and I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight, or today. Appreciate it. Y'all have a good one.
All right, thank you so much. Next, I'd like to invite to the stage Sarah Steffens. She's with the Communications Workers of America. Let's hear it for Sarah.
Hello, everybody. How are we holding up in the heat? We're still ready to fight, right? You know, the members of my union, the Communication Workers of America, have been fighting for the reforms that are in the For the People Act for more than a decade. And in that whole time, we've seen corporations take more and more control over our lives, flooding our elections with money, drowning out our voices. But as we continue rebuilding from this pandemic and from the economic crisis that just happened, that happened as a result, I want us all to take a moment to remember that it is working people who put their lives on the line every day to keep our grocery stores open, keep our hospitals operating, keep our internet connected, and to uphold our democracy through these last elections. So now it's the time to recognize that essential workers are also essential to our democracy. And that's what the For the People Act is all about, restoring power for working families in this country. This bill would ensure that we have a democracy that reflects the concerns of America's working families by getting big money out of our political system, protecting the freedom of all of us to exercise our right to vote, and modernizing and securing our voting systems. You know, despite the ongoing efforts in many, many states to undermine our democracy, the For the People Act has overwhelming bipartisan support from people all across the country, including our members. And that's because the provisions that are in this bill, they are nonpartisan at their core. Simply put, this bill is about ensuring that everyone, regardless of their political ideology, is able to exercise their fundamental rights within our democracy. You know, democracy can't protect itself. That's our job. We have to fight for it. And right now, inaction is simply not an option. The Senate must pass, and President Biden must sign into law the For the People Act to ensure that we have a fully functioning democracy, one where all our voices are heard equally, where public interest, not special interest, guide decision-making, and where we, the people, can put faith in our leaders to do what's right for our country. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. So, needless to say, we were all here today in support of For the People Act, but also the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, but then also, equally as important, D.C. statehood. And our next speaker is a true champion on this critical cause, Bo Schuff, Executive Director of DC Vote. Welcome to the stage.
Yeah, I think so. Big man on a tiny stage. I love it. Thank you all for being here. My name is Bo Schuff. I'm the Executive Director of DC Vote. I have the honor and privilege of representing 700,000 people here in the district who every single day pay taxes and are locked out of the building across the street with no representation. I think I also have the honor of being the 51st speaker, but my count might be off on that. Statehood for too long, for 210 years, we have fought for full and equal representation for the people of the District of Columbia. For 210 years, we have expanded the voting capability of people across this country, whether that was to expand it to women, whether it was to expand it to African Americans, whether it was to expand it to African American women. We have always left the residents here in the District of Columbia out and left them behind. And that's why S1 is step one. We have got to pass the For the People Act to ensure that our democracy works across the country. And then we have to follow it by passing S4, and most importantly, to me anyway, DC statehood through S51 to ensure that For the People is for all of the people and not leaving out 700,000 of us who choose to live here in the District of Columbia. For 200 years, families have raised their children. We've gone bowling. We've bought cars. All of the things we're supposedly not able to do here in the district, yet do not have representation, and it is time for that to end. S1 includes findings on statehood. It will be the first referendum in the Senate on statehood in years, and we are urging the Senate to pass that bill and then move quickly to S4 and S51. I am here to mess up your flag, and I hope you will join me. Thank you.
Thank you, Bo. And I, for one, would be very happy to see our flag get a little bit messed up with one more star for the 51st state. Washington Douglas Commonwealth, long overdue. Thank you so much, Bo, for your leadership on this critical issue. I'd like to invite to the stage next Tashawn Wirasoria with the Sierra Club, one of our great champions as part of the Declaration for American Democracy. Tashawn, it's all you.
Hey everybody, how's everyone doing? Good. I know it's hot, I know it's humid, so I'll be quick. I had a little bit longer remarks, but I'll save you all some time. Sierra Club is profoundly proud to be standing side by side with all our allies, senators, congresspeople, and every single one of you. This is a critical fight for the environmental community. And the Sierra Club, and you're going to hear from one of my colleagues from the League of Conservation Voters, one of the things that we really care about is making sure that the freedom to vote is preserved for every single American. These attacks going on in most states are unfounded and unreal due to the big lie. The For the People Act will help preserve a lot of these voting rights standards, and it must be passed. One of the things that are critical to us as well is that if we want to combat climate crisis, if we want to move to renewable energy, if we want to move away from fossil fuels, we have to make sure that we have actual representation in the halls of Congress. And to do this means we must pass the For the People Act. So I know it's hot, but I'm calling on every single one of you, as well as everyone watching. Please join in this fight. We have a couple weeks left and a lot of work to do, but we look forward to fighting side by side with each of you. Thank you, everyone.
All right, thanks to Sean. All right, we've just got a few more speakers. Thanks again for hanging tight with us. And thanks again to all of our incredible speakers. And thanks to all of you watching at home. Our next speaker is the president for the National Organization of Women. I'd like to invite to the stage Christian Nunes.
Good morning, everyone. How y'all doing? I didn't really hear everyone. How y'all doing? Okay, that's better. Thank you. Yes, we are hot. But you know what? Everyone who has fought for this vote for all these years has stood and been hotter, right? And they've stood in worse situations, so I think we can endure it, right? We're going to endure it for this vote as well. So, but I thank you for your patience, because I am hot too. So my name is Christian Nunes, and I'm the president for the National Organization for Women, and I'm grateful to be here with all of you today and all of our allies. And as we gather here today in front of this building with the words "equal justice under the law" that are literally carved in stone, we are once again here in front of the Supreme Court, fighting again for our rights. We are fighting to protect our freedom to vote, participate in our democracy that should be guaranteed for all of us. However, history has shown us differently. The right to vote has always been hard fought. It wasn't until the Voting Rights Act of 1965 that deliberate and discriminatory practices and barriers to voting were outlawed. But the Supreme Court's decision on Shelby County gutted the preclearance provision of the Voting Rights Act and made it easier for certain states to revert back to the racist ways. Our freedom to vote is still under attack to this very day. And with decade-old hurdles like gerrymandering, voter ID laws, and anti-voter bills, we are systematically and disproportionately denying the freedom to vote to communities of color and marginalized people. And these people of power continue to disguise systematic racism in policies and semantics so they continue to oppress communities instead of creating equity. The For the People Act will protect our freedom to vote. The For the People Act will protect our freedom to vote. This bill would help restore the imbalance and empower all Americans to have equal, accessible voting options. For far too long, our democratic system has placed disproportionate power over our government in the hands of the privileged, who then end up determining many facets of our lives, from our education, to our employment, to our health care. But that's not gonna happen anymore, right? No way. That's why we're here today. We represent the power of grassroots activism, the type that starts in our homes and our communities, the gathering of voices of our country. That's the only way we've ever succeeded in the fighting of our rights, the collective power of the people. For the People Act. So now I'm so proud to be here today when this historic coalition with all our members are excited to join in this effort. And we must do all we can, all of us, to protect and advance a more inclusive democracy. Today we are demanding a more transparent process that we can trust. A democracy where we all have equal power to create a government for the people that is free from racism, sexism, and oppression. We demand the Senate pass S1 for the People Act. Thank you.
Thank you, Christian. We are now very excited to welcome to the stage our final member of Congress for today's event. We'd like to invite Senator Bob Casey to the stage. Thank you, Senator.
Well, thanks, everybody. I haven't been on a stage this big in a while, and we haven't been outside. And I know you've heard from a number of folks who have been making the case for the people. And I know as well you've heard from 9 other United States senators. I'm number 10, so they gave me the most time. So I'm going to be up here for about an hour, if you don't mind. No, I'm only kidding. I'll be brief. But I want to say, first and foremost, thank you for doing this. Thank you for making the case for the right to vote, and thank you for making the case for the people. So give yourselves a hand for that. We've got a real problem in front of us right now. We have our democracy under siege in America because of the hundreds and hundreds of voter suppression bills in legislatures all across the country. There's only one way to deal with that. We need federal legislation to make sure that we're protecting the right to vote and doing a number of other things like getting dark money out of politics and imposing some ethical requirements upon those who serve the public. But on the voting part of it, there's no question about it. I think we've got to be very blunt about this. When we talk about voter suppression bills, when we talk about voter suppression itself, let's be honest what that is. It is yet another form of white supremacy. That's what's happening here. You got politicians, Republican politicians all across the country who did not like the results of the election. So they not only bought into, but they perpetuated the big lie about the election, which led to the attack on the Capitol that we saw on January the 6th. But then after that attack, they continued to attack democracy by perpetuating the big lie, by telling the big lie, and then by supporting voter suppression bills. And why were they so upset? Was it simply that their candidates lost? It was more than that. They were angry and remain angry that one of the reasons, the driving reason why Joe Biden and Kamala Harris were successful and Democrats in the Senate were successful in getting a majority is because we had great support, and thankfully so, from communities of color. And there's just a lot of folks that don't like that. And that's why they're engaged in voter suppression, which has its origins in white supremacy. So we got lots of reasons to be focused and determined to pass for the people. And I want you to know how much I appreciate that. What is wrong with what we've done in the last couple of years? Give you an example. In Pennsylvania in 2019, not knowing we'd have a pandemic, but thankfully we passed a bill in our legislature where Republican legislators supported early voting in that bill. They supported mail-in voting in that bill and supported a whole range of changes to voting. But then when it didn't go their way, they're engaging now in voter suppression. The only way to deal with that is to make sure that we pass for the people. Your advocacy, your passion, your determination, your presence here on a warm, humid day will help us pass for the people. God bless your work. Let's get it done. Let's pass for the people. Thank you.
Let's give it up again for Senator Casey. Thank you, Senator. We appreciate your leadership. All right, we're down to our final 5 speakers. Thanks again for everyone coming out on this hot and humid day. Very excited to be with you all. Our next speaker is Samer Khalif. He's the president of the American Arab Anti-Discrimination Committee. All you.
Yeah, don't want to fall my, First, I want to start off by thanking everybody, not just for being here, but actually for sticking it out in this heat. We now know who the hardcore supporters are, and it's with your help will we get things done. It's the hardcore people that get it done. So thank you for being here. Again, my name is Samer Khalif. I'm the national president of the American Arab Anti-Discrimination Committee. The Arab American community across the country joins our partners and raise our voices alongside this diverse coalition in demanding action. Our lawmakers must not stand idly by while our constitutional right to vote, one of the most cherished rights in this country, is once again under attack. We see what state legislators are doing across this country. They are introducing, passing, and implementing laws intended to restrict and make it more difficult for black and brown communities to vote. This will only diminish our democracy. No longer can we allow candidates to select their voters or think that state-sanctioned voter suppression is a viable path to victory. Congress must act now to counter these efforts before it's too late. We don't need what's best for candidates. What we need is to pass the Fair People for the People Act. Passage of this act will bring down barriers and bring forward more participation of black and brown communities in our domestic process and institutions. We cannot wait any longer. Our democracy is under attack and Congress must act now. We stand proudly with our friends and colleagues this morning and will continue to fight alongside them to protect our democracy. Thank you.
All right, final stretch. When I say for the, you say people. For the. For the. When I say for the, you say people. For the. For the. All right, I'd like to now welcome to the stage Bella DeLacio. She's with March for Our Lives.
Good afternoon, everybody. Who's ready to pass the For the People Act? So hello, everyone. My name is Bella DeLacio, and I'm a policy associate at March for Our Lives, and I'm on the Team Enough Executive Council. I am from South Florida, and I'm the proud daughter of Cuban immigrants who came here to give me and my sisters a better future in a better country. I stand here today because although my family was promised the American dream, that reality has been shattered by a broken democracy. On February 14th, 2018, I was a senior in high school. I was eating pizza with my dad after school, and I will never forget the way my heart dropped and my stomach wrenched when I received many texts from my friends saying there's been a shooting at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School, a school not very far from mine. Within 10 minutes, I received videos from inside the school of students my age and younger bleeding on their classroom floor, screaming in fear, screaming for help, screaming for their lives. Not only did I feel the death of my former elementary school classmates, I felt the weight of a broken democracy around me. There are so many amazing senators and Congress members speaking here today to represent their constituents who are ready for change. But my state is not so lucky because my senators aren't here. And guess what? They won't ever be. My senators didn't care when 17 students and staff members died in that high school, leaving so many others broken and traumatized. They didn't care when 49 people were murdered at Pulse nightclub. And they don't care about the countless Floridians who are victims of gun violence, especially the black and brown people who are disproportionately affected by gun violence every single day. You know what they care about? They care about the massive donations they receive from the gun lobby. They put profit over people. Senator Rubio has accepted over $3 million from the gun lobby. And Senator Scott has an A+ rating from the NRA. Did you know that we have not passed life-saving gun legislation in over 27 years? Although it is a leading cause of death for young people in this nation, and it claims the lives of over 100 Americans every single day in this nation. But there is hope. The For the People Act will tackle corruption and ensure that our government works for the people of this country by reducing the influence of big money in politics and increasing ethical standards for our elected officials. We need the For the People Act because the communities that shoulder the burden of our American flaws, including gun violence, have been historically marginalized and cut out of the democratic process. They suffer from extreme anti-voting laws. These inequities are intentionally perpetrated to prevent those who are most impacted by issues like gun violence from being able to have the opportunity to hold their elected officials accountable for the actions that they take. More than 90% of Americans are in support of universal background checks. Yet the progress of those bills has stalled due to a system that ignores the voice of the majority. We need the For the People Act so that we can pass crucial gun safety legislation. We need the For the People Act so we can put people over profits. We need it so that Americans no longer have to lose their lives to the hands of a gun and the hands of a failed democracy. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Bella. Next, I'd like to invite to the stage Justin Kwasa. He's the Voting Rights Program Director with the League of Conservation Voters. Justin.
All right, how's everybody doing out there? So I know it's been a long time. We're a little bit tired, but we're almost at the end. So this is where we have to be the strongest, all right? We're almost there. S1 is almost there. The For the People are almost there. So we need to have the energy. So let's get some energy because we're almost there. All right. So as I said, my name is Justin Kwasa. I'm with the League of Conservation Voters. And as you know by our name, conservation voters, we believe that our environment and our democracy are connected. And honestly, to be perfectly honest, we cannot have a healthy democracy. It's like we cannot have a healthy environment unless we first have a healthy democracy. So, you know, environment is kind of the best story when we talk about why our democracy is, environment is the best story when we talk about why our democracy is broken. So we know that all of us want clean air, clean water, clean land, but yet we know that big corporations can buy their way out of respecting any of those rules. So that's why we care about this so much in the environmental space. All right, we need the we need the For the People Act because it protects the communities that we care the most about, particularly the Black, the Brown, the Latinx, the Asian American, the indigenous, and the immigrant communities that for so long haven't had a say in our democracy on purpose. These are the communities that have been left out of the system, and because of that, they've been the most easy to pick on and most easy to take advantage of. So the For the People Act is needed so that we can increase access to the ballot for all these communities so they can have their voice heard. We need the redistricting protections so that we can have people choose their politicians and not the opposite way around. We need the money in politics provisions so that we make sure large corporations can't just buy elections. And we also need it so that the people from the communities that are most affected environmentally can run so that they can have a seat at the table. And finally, we need the ethics protections in order to make sure that when people step out of line, we have the paper trail that we can hold them accountable. All right? So I really just want to finish by saying, look, we only have one Earth. We only have one democracy. And right now, the time is running out for both. So we need to pass the For the People Act so that we ensure that we leave a better democracy and a better earth, not only for ourselves, but for our children. So please support the For the People Act, and thank you all for your time. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Justin. And thank you for the important work and leadership of the League of Conservation Voters. Next, I'd like to welcome to the stage Chris Talent. He's the National Campaign Director with Hazmat America. Chris.
Thank you. And thank you to all our champions in Congress. Woo! We all want a democracy that works for everyone, not wealthy corporations, campaign donors, billionaires, and the 1%. Woo! I'm the director of Hazmat America. We're called that because we are calling out the toxic interests that are corrupting our democracy. I am here today with Clean Up Carl, the guy on the floor over there, America's only anti-corruption superhero. We're traveling the country to call out the corrupting interests that are corrupting our democracy so we can rally for a democracy that works for everyone in rallies and fights across the country, from raising the minimum wage to protecting our environment to fighting for prescription drugs and health care for everyone and a fair tax system that is not rigged for wealthy donors. People are fighting against the influence of billionaires, wealthy campaign donors. Boo! Toxic interests are spending massive amounts of campaign cash to rig the system to their benefit at the expense of everyone else. They paid millions and millions of dollars to rig the tax code by passing the 2017 tax scam in favor of wealthy donors. It resulted in a nearly $2 trillion payoff for wealthy donors and big corporations. But there's something we can do about it. There's a solution. We can pass the For the People Act and win a democracy that works for everyone, not wealthy campaign donors, billionaires, corporations, and the 1%. We must end the influence of big money in our democracy. We must stop gerrymandering, and we must get rid of barriers to voting. Say it with me. Billionaire campaign cash is toxic. Corporate campaign cash is toxic. We must pass the For the People Act and save our democracy. Woo!
All right, awesome, Chris. Thank you so much. Believe it or not, that was not the closing act. That was amazing, Chris. Thank you so much. We do have one more speaker to bring us home. Thanks again, everyone, for sticking around with us. I'd like to welcome to the stage now Reverend George Gilbert. He's the founder of the Center for Racial Equity and Justice. He's also a member of our African American Ministers in Action program at People for the American Way. Reverend Gilbert, the floor is yours.
We are here today to demand that America holds up to the rhetoric of her words that says she is the land of the free, home of the brave. We are here today to demand that America cleans her filthy garments, stained by the hatred of racism, the love of money, and the lack of concern for the least, the lost, and the left out. We are here today at this historical moment in time, deeply disturbed by the overwhelming, troubling dynamics that have converged on God's people in a devastating storm of spiritual, political, and cultural chaos. To some, this storm appeared suddenly with the emergence of the former President Donald Trump's administration through the torrent of lies, perverted public policy, innuendos, and a bully pulpit. But I am here to tell you that this chaotic storm is no flash flood. For the descendants of slavery, we have lived in America's chaotic storm since we boarded the ships from a port that we would never see again. And every time we come to a place of progress, to a place where we can stand on our own feet, we run into a downpour, lightning and thunder of the power of white rage, whose job is to push progress back. Yes, it is white rage that we see today. Every time black descendants of slavery make strides to being free from the chains of white supremacy, white rage is poured on to our community that has decades of detriment to the building of our future. Every time black men, black women, and God's abolitionists stand up to be accounted for, it is white rage that strategizes against our community. Every time progress happens, our community it suffers from the backlash of white rage and is triggered and manifested. It fights to maintain not only the upper hand, but total dominance. Meanwhile, hiding behind a false moral ground. It is the right-wing Republican politician who calls for a country of morals and values, while all the time involved in a child sex prostitution ring. It is the evangelical preacher who stands firmly against abortions, but yet remains silent against those who can't feed themselves. While right rage beats the descendants of slavery down, while at the same time shifts the blame on them for being beaten down. The abuser blames the abused for having problems in their neighborhoods, problems with policing, problems with poverty, problems with bad schools, and problems with just trying to feed their children. The truth about the truth is white rage reacts to every civil rights advancement that takes place in America. You know the story. We can call the roll, Tulsa, Oklahoma bombing, white rage. COINTELPRO, white rage. The crack epidemic, white rage. The pipeline to prison, white rage. The election of Donald Trump after the election of Barack Obama, white rage. And now we stand at voter suppression laws, white rage. However, today and forevermore, you are exposed. Exposed for hiding behind a cross without care for the people. You are exposed for speeches with no real action. You are exposed for the promises that you never keep. White rage shows that America has never been a true democratic society. White rage happens simply because the descendants of slavery no longer want to be slaves, and they want progress. We want equitable voting. We want respect. We want health care. We want good communities. We want wealth. We want a universal policing act bill passed in America. As I close, many in my community and your community ask, why do you keep marching? Why do you keep talking? Why do you keep speaking? Well, it reminds me of a story of a grandmother in the South who wanted to take her grandson to see an elevator. He had never seen an elevator before. So she took him to a real expensive hotel in the rich part of the county. And she said, young man, this is an elevator. Go and push the button and see what happened. And he pushed the button and the door opened. And she said, come on, let's get on. And they got on, and she said, push to the 20th floor. He pushed the button, and right away, the doors opened, and they got off. And she said, now you're on the 20th floor. Tell me what you think about this elevator. The young grandson, in his innocence, said, Grandma, I can't explain it. All I know is that the upstairs came downstairs. Well, I come by today to tell you to keep marching, keep standing, keep talking. And today, we're going to keep pushing the button. I'm a man of faith. I don't know when it's going to happen, but I know soon and very soon that the upstairs will come downstairs. God bless you.
Thank you so much, Reverend. That's it, folks. Thanks again so much for coming out. We'll see you next time. We've got a lot of organizing coming up for the rest of this month. If you want to learn about what the Declaration for American Democracy is doing, you can go to declarationforamericandemocracy.org. My name, again, is Rio Tazwa. I'm with People for the American Way. If you want to learn more about the work that we do, you can go to pfa.org. We'd love to have you. The fight continues. Thanks so much.
Baby, how you feeling? Head toss, check my nails. Baby, how you feeling? Woo, child, tired of the bullshit. Gone, dust your shoulders off. Keep it moving, yes, Lord. Trying to get some new shit in there. Swimwear, going to the pool shit. Come now, come dry your eyes. You know you a star, you can touch the sky. I know that it's hard, but you have to try. If you need advice, let me simplify. If he don't love